Welcome everyone back to our ongoing study of the Gospel account of John. We're coming very close to the end of the book now. We are in chapter 21. And just a couple of things I'll mention before we get started today. One, this may be a particularly brief midweek recording because as I'm kind of looking at the next few verses out, there's one section here in particular that I want to take as a unit, preferably on Sunday, when more people will be there and may be able to hear. So I think today I'll stop at verse 14, even if it hasn't taken me terribly long to get there, specifically so that at 15 and following we can kind of look at as a unit together and not have to worry about that. So my apologies up front if it's a bit briefer than usual. Hopefully you won't hold that against me. The second thing I want to mention is we are about to finish up John within the next week or two, and my plan is to circle back to Galatians after that. We had been covering John and Galatians, one on Sunday, one on Wednesday, many lifetimes ago when COVID started, and we headed down this path of some class sessions being live, others continuing to be recorded. So we'll circle back to Galatians, but I have not, and ever since we've gone back to having Sundays in person and this midweek recording, I have not been a fan of splitting it up the way that I have. Because I know some of y'all tune into this and you watch the midweek recording, so you're getting the full picture. There may be others out there who, for one reason or another, only catch what's said on Sunday morning, and because of that, there's the potential to have gaps. I would prefer, the same group of people be able to follow through all the way. So, what I'm thinking about doing, and I'll mention this Sunday as well, I'll throw it out there for feedback because I want to know what you all think. I'm thinking about, for the midweek recordings, working through a lengthy commentary on the book of Psalms, written by a member of the church, one of my instructors at Memphis actually, who had given me permission some time ago to post his outlines in our weekly bulletin. I had been doing that for a while. But again, it's been 4 years at this point, and so I'm thinking about doing that the midweek, for the midweek recording, covering a psalm at a time, looking at the simple outline, maybe making a few comments on it, and kind of having that be a midweek, a midweek quick study, making our way through Psalms, and then working through the main class material, which again will circle back to Galatians on Sundays. That way, if you're here on Sunday mornings, you won't miss anything if you happen either not to tune into the midweek Facebook post, or as some of our members' cases, you don't have the technological means to do it. So, John 21, we had left off with verse 9. Now, I had mentioned Sunday that there's a lot of symbolism in this chapter. A lot of things kind of harken back either to things we'd seen in John or in the other gospel accounts. So you have, in this chapter, the disciples are out. Some of them, verse 2 mentions them. There's 2 there that go unnamed. So not the full contingent of them, but some are out there on the Sea of Galilee. Here in verse 1, John uses the late 1st century term Sea of Tiberias, Sea of Galilee. And we have this interesting encounter where they're out fishing. So they're out on a boat out on the Sea of Galilee, and they see Jesus. He's on the shore, kind of at a distance, and they don't recognize him. They don't know who he is. Once they do realize who he is, Peter jumps out of the boat. It says naked, but as we discussed, he's not dressed for company, as we might say. He's got on kind of his undergarments, his tunic and whatnot, but he's not formally fully dressed the way one might want to be in that day and age to meet people publicly, but they're not literally naked the way we would think of it. But he jumps off the boat. I'm presuming because of the extreme shame he felt over the incident with his denial. And I say that especially because of what we're going to talk about this coming Sunday, hopefully, verses 15 and following, because there's a callback there as well, a rather clear one, I think. But the interesting parallel there is, you recall another occasion, the disciples were out on the boat on the very same sea, another occasion, the disciples they saw Jesus at a distance and they didn't recognize him. They saw Jesus at a distance and they didn't recognize a ghost of some kind. On that occasion, they thought he was an apparition. Once they realized it was him, Peter also got out. However, once they realized it was him, Jesus was out. Peter also got out of the boat. Part of the reason they thought he ghost. Jesus was out walking upon the water. But Jesus was walking on the water. Part of the reason they thought Peter ventured out of the boat on that occasion as well. But Jesus was walking on the water. Peter ventured out of the boat on that occasion and made his way toward Jesus. But it was an example of tremendous faith. The realization made his way. What am I doing? I can't walk on water. He fell. The realization was what am I doing? I can't walk on water. He fell through. Here, same place again. In a boat to even Jesus is at a distance. Here, they don't know who he is. Again, in a boat. Once they do know who he is, again, Peter's they don't know who he is. Very different circumstances. Once they do know who he is, there's also a callback that we discussed on very different circumstances. There's also a callback that we discussed on Sunday. Again, John. It's the only time it's mentioned in John. Fishes in the net. You have similar. Again, John. It's the only time it's mentioned in John. Synoptics. You have similar very early on in the other 3. Here, the synoptics resurrection happened. But again, kind of like we discussed with Jesus overturning the money changers' tables. But again, kind of like we discussed with Jesus overturning the money changers' tables for the synoptics in John to measure more than once. That rings a bell. That's for the synoptics in John to measure with one another. But that here in verse 9, they were come to the shore, they found a fire of coals there, and fish laid thereon and bread. And here in verse 9, they were come to the shore, clearly Jesus has coals there, and fish laid thereon. Is there some symbolism? Where did this come from? Clearly Jesus that great miracle. Is there some symbolism here? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That great miracle, the one miracle is when Jesus fed the 5,000. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. On that occasion, what did he feed them? When Jesus fed the 5,000 fish and bread. On that occasion, what did he feed them? Potentially a bit of symbolism, a bit of a kind of a callback here. Potentially a bit of symbolism, a bit of a kind of a callback here to something else. They're out of the boat and they see Jesus just like the fish in the net, just Peter like being Jesus, the one to they're out of the boat and they see Jesus in different circumstances, but a similar Peter being the one to leave the boat. Again, different circumstances, but he's offering to feed them. Really the same thing that they had seen him feed this enormous multitude. Really the same thing that they had seen him feed this enormous multitude. Take that comment for what it's worth. I don't know that it's intentionally kind of harkening back to that, but it's interesting. Take that comment for what it's worth. I don't know that it's intentionally kind of harkening back to that, but it's interesting. Simon Peter bring of the fish. Okay, so he's back now.
He jumped out of the boat. Simon Peter went up. Okay, so he's back now. He jumped out of the boat. He drew the net to the land full of great fishes, 153. He's coming forth. He drew the net to the land full of great fishes, 153. Okay, so they had caught. So for all there were so many, yet was not full to capacity, but okay, so they had caught holding so much. Jesus said them full to capacity, but the net is holding. Jesus said again, come and with this statement, it's reminiscent to me at least. Again, going all the way back to John chapter 2. With this statement, what was the phrase to me at least? Going all the way back to John chapter 2, because soon to be. What was the phrase as discovering Jesus? As you had Andrew, for example, soon to be apostles had been following discovering Jesus. Right, you had Andrew, for example. He finds Jesus, goes back to tell his brother Peter after John the Baptist, and the phrase that you see several times goes back to tell his brother Peter, come and see. And the phrase that you see several times, this one we've been waiting for, the one that John the Baptist has been preparing the way for, he's here, and I found him. This one we've been waiting for, the one that John the Baptist has been preparing the way for, he's here, and I found him. Again, perhaps perhaps not intentionally meant to be kind of calling back to that initial. Perhaps not intentionally meant to be kind of calling back to that initial time they first heard about him, and you find this phrase several times, phraseology, come and dine. And I find this interesting. None of the disciples durst or dared to ask him, who art thou? Knowing that it was the Lord. So you remember, they didn't know who he was. And we talked about this at length Sunday, so I'll try not to repeat too much here. But it was just like with Mary Magdalene at the tomb. They saw him there on the shore. They had no idea who he was. He talked to them, right back in verse 7. He asked them, children, have you any meat? So they see him and they hear him, and they don't know who he is. The only thing that causes them to realize who he is the miracle. It's verse 7, right? It must be Jesus because, this thing with the fish, it has to be him. What I find so fascinating about this, and John actually reiterates it in verse 14, they've already seen him. All right, you get back to chapter 20, he appeared to them. Remember, they were hiding behind closed doors. He showed himself to them. He ate in their presence. He showed them the scars, the wound. He does the same thing again a few days later when Thomas is there, because he hadn't been there the first time. That's how he got the name Doubting Thomas. So they've already seen him. They've already met him post-resurrection. And yet here in chapter 21, it's like, they don't recognize him. They don't know his voice. And here in chapter 12, they're not willing to ask, who are you? Because they know it must be him. It boggles my mind somewhat. Certainly, you think of Peter always willing to put his foot in his mouth. You think back to chapter 13. On this occasion, he certainly isn't going to be the one to do it. But they know it's him. They know it's him, so, I don't know. I find their behavior perplexing, to say the least. But verse 13, Jesus then cometh, and taketh the bread, and giveth them, and fish likewise. Again, hearkening back to chapter 6. The feeding of the 5,000, right? Jesus provided for the multitude on that occasion by giving them fish and bread, and he's doing the same thing here for his own disciples. He's providing. He gives them bread, he gives them fish. Verse 14, and again, like I said, a rather short recording today, but I want to cover 15 and following Sunday because it kind of goes together, so I don't want to delve too far into it in our recording. John reiterating what I just said. This is now the third time that Jesus showed himself to his disciples after that he was risen from the dead. Okay, so the first time they were behind closed doors, right? This goes back to chapter 20, verse 19, right? He came and he showed himself to them there. They were all there except for Thomas. He ate in their presence, Luke tells us that. Again, proving that he has a physical body, right? He's not merely an apparition. He doesn't just appear to be there. He is physically there. Right? He can eat the food. He shows them the scars in his hands, the scar from the wound in his side where he was pierced. Again, proving that it is in fact him. Right? He is him. He's in the same body that he was buried in flesh and blood. He died and he's living again. right? Not in any kind of a sense that perhaps he appears to be there. He's like an apparition or a ghost of some sort. No, he's physically in their presence in his body that they know. Again, all the more reason I find it perplexing that Mary Magdalene doesn't recognize him, because she knew him when he appears to her there at the tomb. It's the same as was pointed out Sunday morning with the men on the road to Emmaus, right? It was like with Mary Magdalene. There comes a point, and Luke specifically tells us, that they have this sudden recognition, right? Their eyes are open and they know that it's him. It's similar with Mary Magdalene. And again, in chapter 21, it's similar with the disciples. They don't know who he is until the miracle happens. And then even when they meet him on the shore, they're not willing to ask, "Who are you?" because they've already kind of pieced together who he is. But they've already met him. And when he appears to them, he's in the same body. John goes to great lengths to make it crystal clear, as does Luke. He's in the physical body that they knew. The scars and the wound, eating the fish, all these things prove it. Again, it's part of the reason I find the way all of this happens so perplexing. But nonetheless, there's clearly something to this that they didn't understand at the time, and perhaps is difficult for us to understand as well. But anyway, so this is the third time he's appeared to them since he rose from the dead. The first time, all of them except Thomas were there behind closed doors, hiding for fear of the Jews. The second time, it happens again, but this time Thomas is there. Right, he demands the same proof that the others got, for which he gets the unfortunate, in my opinion, moniker Doubting Thomas. As I've said, if he's doubting, the others certainly were too. And then this is the third time. So out on the Sea of Tiberias, the Sea of Galilee, you have this incident with the boat, Peter jumping out, the fish that caused them to recognize who he was. They come to the shore. He's there with a campfire, bread and fish. He invites them to eat. They know it's him, but clearly there's some awkwardness going on here, given what we find in verse 12. And Lord willing, Sunday morning we will pick back up with verse 15 and note an interesting exchange that occurs between Jesus and Peter. So, I hope you will be looking forward to that. And also, please, if you would, be giving some thought to the suggestion I made regarding the Psalms commentary for the midweek material. I'm curious. Let me know what you think about that. Or if you would prefer what we've been doing, kind of breaking the class up. Like I said, I'm not a fan of that. I would prefer to have the same Sunday morning group hearing all the material rather than breaking it up and having some posted midweek and some Sunday. But anyway, I hope the rest of your week is good. I look forward to seeing you Sunday morning. Thank you for your attention.
Over all the earth you reign on high, every mountain stream, every sunset sky. But my one request, Lord, my only aim, is that you'd reign in me again. Lord, reign in me, reign in your power, over all my dreams. In my darkest hour, you are the Lord of all I am. So won't you reign in me again? Over every thought, over every word, may my life reflect the beauty of my Lord. 'Cause you mean more to me than any earthly thing. So won't you reign in me again? Lord, reign in me, reign in your power, over all my dreams. In my darkest hour, you are the Lord of all I am. So won't you reign in me again? Lord, reign in me, reign in your power, over all my dreams. In my darkest hour, you are the Lord of all I am. So won't you reign in me again? You are the Lord of all I am. So won't you reign